Hello and welcome back to my Nills to Build series. Now it's been a while since I've made the previous episode. I think this is going to be episode 19, and just a reminder, this is a series in which I start on the live game with no items in my bank and eventually get up to 5 bill. So far in the series, according to my notes in the previous episode, which I did a bank video in the previous episode, so that's pretty safe to say that I'm worth somewhere around 200 mil at the start of this episode. And since the last episode, I've made I guess a small amount from the QBD. But a few things to note about the QBD is if you wanted to do it, I made a guide a while ago, I'll link it in the description, about the mechanics of the QBD. Basically, it just tells you the attacks it does and how to avoid it. Which is really all you really need to know, besides having the stats for it, which is actually fairly low. I would say at least 70 defense for Barrow's armor and at least a 75 plus weapon. So I tried using a whip which is 70 and it took an awful long time, but with using a vine whip which was level 75, that did pretty decent. And this was using Piety and not Turmoil, which I don't have yet. So it's actually been a very long time since I've actually got to my first Chaotic, which was ages ago. So with Chaotic, it's really decent. In terms of accuracy, kills don't take that long. And well, for Chaotics, especially with the update for Dungeoneering, where solo floors get more XP, and the introductions of sinkholes. Well, actually, solo floors got a XP boost, but then it's still more efficient to do in teams of 5s. But it's just that if you find it hard to find teams, the solo option is there, so it doesn't force you to have to find people to do the floors with. But with like the solo floor update, then there's introduction of sinkholes, it's become much more easier to get your first Chaotic. Although still not everybody has their first Chaotic, that's understandable, but with prices nowadays, a Vine Whip, which is classed as level 75, is still pretty cheap by itself. And that'll just do fine for the QBD. So unfortunately, since the last episode, Royall Pieces have been dropping quite a bit. It's no longer like even close to half a mil per piece. It's probably like half of that or a third. And I don't know, that's kind of odd to me because like since in the EOC, the Royal Crossbow total only costs around 600k. Not really that much. The bolts are pretty inexpensive by itself, especially if you're using abilities in which you don't actually use ammunition, which I still find odd. But the point is that the Royal Crossbow altogether costs somewhere around 600k, yet the Zari bow, which has the exact same stats as the Royal Crossbow, costs 100 mil, yet the Royal Crossbow is still dropping. Now that, I just don't really understand. Maybe it's that it's quite easy to get, but I don't know. Like, Next has gotten a lot easier too, so I'm not entirely sure why it's still dropping. Except for the minor difference where, like, if a monster is weak to arrows rather than just bolts, then maybe, but that's still only a minor difference in accuracy. So I'll probably talk about the price drops on certain items later in the video, but I mean, like, because of everything just dropping, I really just don't plan to sell anything. I'll probably just hoard it all in my bank unless I need to liquidate it to like purchase something. But aside from that, I'm probably just gonna accumulate a massive PVM tab and sell it pretty much all at the end. Because like I said, unless I'm gonna buy something specifically that costs a lot of cash, I probably won't need to sell it. While doing the QD, even with the new grave system, which is where it's supposed to solve the problem of where items were being deleted after like around 250 options because of the item limit, meaning that if a lot of people died at one spot, items would start being deleted from the game. And that's kind of what happened to Darden quite a bit, so they added a grave update to try to solve that problem. The upside is it solved the problem, because instead of having items actually drop to the floor, it's kind of just stored in this one spot. But then they couldn't solve the problem for untradables, so that untradables fall below your grave. So while doing QBD, it's like this one time I forgot to just check below because I must have been tired or something, and I kind of just like forgot to pick up my Chaotic Claw. So I ended up losing my Chaotic Claw along with a few other untradables, but I guess like the upside is that I actually had some leftover tokens, like around 400, 500k, because I've been training Dungeoneering quite a bit since the last episode. So the upside is that I wasn't hindered with having to go back to Dungeoneering just to get up another Dragon Claw. So the first time I did QBD, back when it was originally released, I did a couple hundred kills without getting any of the cool drops that were actually rare, like the Dragon Kite Shield, the Dragon Bone Kit, and, well, the Royal Pieces don't really count. They probably count as being more of a common drop. Now that when I do QBD and I get like 2 Dragon Kites and a few Dragon Bone Kits, I'm quite pleasantly surprised that I got it. Not surprised about its value, but more that it's just, I guess, it's supposed to be rare. It's not really worth much anymore as it was or when it was originally released, but that's pretty much, I guess, I'm probably done with the QB for a while because I've gotten one of every single drop. The value isn't really that high anymore, so I'm probably going to look towards getting something more valuable. I also recall reading somewhere like a JMod post that the QB is currently the best source for effigies in the game, and even though, according to a JMod that it is, I've only seen like a handful of effigies since the nerf. So I guess I'll just talk about it here. Since the last episode, a few things have happened. There's 2 events I just want to note that have affected the progress of this series. By affected, I just mean by how fast my progress is going to be. So I'll be continuing the series no matter what update comes out, as this is something I want to complete. So the first event was the EOC beta update. It caused a lot of panic selling due to what was good at the beta at the time, and prices were just quite unpredictable in terms of profit per hour for quite a while. But that happened quite a few episodes ago. The second thing I wanted to note was the introduction of the 07 servers. The 07 servers, now I play both. I play the 07 servers as well as the live game. But without a doubt, the 07 servers have affected the live game. One of the few key things that happened on its release, as well as prior, was people were liquidating their bank to sell for 07 GP. There was a lot of cross-server trading going on, and I'm quite disappointed that Jagex did not take steps to prevent this. The thing that took a big hit to me putting out an episode during this time was how much money could be made in the 07 servers. And what I mean by that is it being a complete reset to the game. Money making methods are going to start out extremely profitable but quickly drop down in cash per hour. So participating early will save more time than doing it at a later date. So I want to make this clear that I do not support cross-server trading. I believe the journey is more important than the achievements. It's how you get to it, not just getting it. So I don't plan to do any crossover trading, nor do I support it, because I'm already fairly wealthy in the main game, so I don't actually need money, and I'm already doing a from scratch series on the 07 servers. But it came to a point where very early on, if you were to trade between servers, if you made money on the 07 servers, then traded it 07 to EOC, you would profit at a rate of around 100 mil per hour, depending on what you were doing. It even passed 100 mil per hour if you were doing certain things, like there were certain methods that were extremely profitable, like rune hatches early on in the Enchanted Valley. Then there were the first to the whips, which took a little longer than most, but being the first to almost anything meant that you got to dictate the price and just monopolize on the entire market, which a lot of people did. But returning to the point, since a lot of people liquidate their bank, and for those who don't know what liquidate means, it means basically you sell everything in your bank and turn it all into cash. So since people were dumping their items into the Grand Exchange for instant cash to trade for 07 GP, it caused almost every single item to quickly sink in value, which could account for why Royall Pieces suffered a severe drop since the last episode. And that's about it. I'm just really disappointed in Jagex for not taking steps to hinder cross-server trading or just put down a stance that they're against it. Because it devalues both sides. Not only did it allow players on the 07 servers to quickly accelerate their progress over others because they just so happen to be fairly wealthy in the live game, it severely hurt the economy of the live game server as well, along with a few other things that affects both sides. So yeah, there's that. So one of the earlier dailies I was doing in this Nills to Build series was getting potion flasks. Now at the time I didn't have the crafting level to actually make them, but I finally got around to making them all and got around to selling them for a fairly decent price, so made a decent amount of money there. Like I mentioned earlier in the video, with the release of a few updates like the bonus XP you get from solo dungeoneering floors and sinkholes, dungeoneering has become a lot easier to level up, and I ended up getting 99 DG off a sinkhole floor, And well, sinkholes is kind of a bit different. Sinkhole is mainly for XP, but not really good for farming DG tokens. But like I showed earlier, I already have like 400k engineering tokens that I'm not using, so I don't really need the tokens. I just need the XP for eventually when I go for a Comcade. So yeah, there's that. And for the record, I'm fairly competent at DGing, or whatever the term may be. I've keyed sub 13 floors before they included any of these updates that have made engineering quite easier than what it originally was. With the introduction of the EOC, there were a few videos made months prior to its introduction about the tackle box being pretty much invaluable for PVM in the EOC because the champion tackle box, or whatever it's called, the one that holds 30 raw fish, if used in conjunction with a bunyip, it would make it pretty much a pack yak worth of rocktails at the cost of 3 inventory slots, one being the tackle box, then the bunyip pouch, and the bunyip scrolls. Fish flingers existed pre-EOC, that's where you get the tackle box from the D&D fish flingers. But this wasn't as valuable pre-EOC compared to now, because pre-EOC, if you ate food with a bunyip, it delayed your auto attack, because it would count as if you actually ate a rocktail, so there was a trade-off for the additional food that you get. Sure, it gave you more food, but you lose auto attacks for that, so if you're like at next, during the blood phase, if you can't out-hit the blood phase, all of the food in the world isn't going to save you. Now, of course, people still used it for next because it isn't that difficult, but that's just an example. Also, well, brews healed more than rocktails pre-EOC. You use brews so that you're consistently attacking and it would only slightly lower your stats. If you brewed every 15 seconds, which was the same as 5 rapid auto attacks with a Royal Crossbow, or a chaotic crossbow, you would not suffer the penalty of the lowered stats because every 15 seconds with overload, your stats are re-boosted. So if you sip your brew right before it's gonna get boosted up, you're not gonna suffer from the lowered stats. And it's little things like that, like counting overload ticks, that helps you get a free-for-all kill. Although I may have explained a little too far into that, but the point was, pre-EOC, the tackle box wasn't like 100% yes you need this item, because if you used a bunyip scroll with a raw fish, it would delay your next attack, because it counted as if you actually ate a real food. So there was a trade-off for using it. But while the EOC was in the beta form, people saw that using a bunyip with the scroll on a raw fish didn't stall your next attack while you were using abilities. That made it definitely something to consider, like being able to heal yourself without losing an auto attack with no consequence made it pretty much something you want. It only took 3 spaces, it offered you 30 food, saving 27 space total for edible fish. But that wasn't the only thing changed with the EOC, because the changes to certain healing items like brews, lowering the healing effect of brew so that it doesn't heal as much as a normal fish, made the tackle box even more desirable. Which I always found odd that rocktail brewing was allowed pre-EOC, because it's something that if you do it in single way combat, it's nearly impossible to kill the person because the brew and the rocktail just makes you heal too much too quickly. So since they lowered the healing effect of brew, they also lowered the negative effect of the brew, but that's a different point. Since brews were no longer the best healing food and normal food became better, the change from making brews heal less than normal food made the tackle box from fish flingers worthwhile to get. It's basically a pack yak of food, which is why I'm here at fish flingers. Because it's just too good to not get it. The 24 fish tackle box is maybe around a month. I could already get that if I wanted, and the 30 fish tackle box is around 3 months to get. I'm still a bit off from that one, so that's why I'm getting it. But during the beta stage, I still wonder why it was still allowed, because clearly it seems like an overpowered item. It only takes like 3 months to get for that 30 fish. First, like, you have your 28 inventory slots in your backpack, then you have like maybe a 30 inventory space in a pack yak, and then a 30 fish inventory in your tackle box. That altogether, that's a lot of room for food. So of course take out like 5 or 6 slots for like pouches, scrolls, that's still a lot of inventory space for food. People did point this out while it was in the beta form, but like hearing the idea of it, I didn't think that it would stick, but well, it's been like several months since the EOC has been out and it's still around, so I'm guessing it's here to stay. So the rest of this episode, after seeing the severe drop of the QBD items, I thought it's time to unlock more monsters to kill. QBD was viable for a while, but I wanted to get something else, something more new. Seeing as I've gotten every unique drop from the QBD, including a few visages from the QBD, it may be time to try out more monsters. As another goal of this series is to actually get one of every unique drop from each notable monsters in RS, just as kind of like a personal goal, bucket list kind of thing. So the latest new drop, I believe, it belongs to the monsters unlocked from the World Awakes quest. So I finally decided to, well, get the quest done. Not only does completing the quest unlock the automatons, it also unlocks the new ultimates that come along with the quest, and some of them are useful, some of them are not, but, well, I unlocked the ability to use them. Although initially I thought that the automatons were unlocked and the additional quest rewards, where you need like 5 quest storylines to unlock, were just bonus XP. At the end of the quest, I found out that I was wrong, that to unlock the automatons, you actually need to complete all the additional quests. So that's pretty much what the rest of this video is going to be about, because, well, I pretty much did not start any of the storylines except for the Draken storyline, where I did that for the Draken's medallion so that I could get to barrels faster. So the automatons do drop the level 85 gloves, and I believe they're still above what they're worth in the Grand Exchange. A decent amount. So depending on how rare it is, I may stay there a while, but if it's like super rare where it's not even worth considering as a money making method, I may just stay there until I get one of each gloves and maybe one of the pets. Completing the quest gives a boatload of XP for what was about a 52-minute quest. It seems a bit high, although I'm kind of curious what you guys think about this, where generally XP rewards get progressively higher compared to previous quest storylines. So like a Grandmaster quest now would probably reward more XP than a Grandmaster quest in the past. It would only make sense, right? But at what point does it go too far? Because for the reward to stay relevant, it has to keep up with what is available at the time. So should quest reward XP be based on what is available at the time, or should it be just like a fixed amount? Because like a 50k XP lamp reward would have been huge like 5 years ago, but 50k XP lamp now is more of an average reward. Although there have been more Grandmaster quests available now compared to like 5 years ago, so I guess that could also be a factor. One of the requirements to unlock the automatons was the Temple at Cenestine quest, the one that unlocks Turmoil. That quest, for some reason, I remember it being a lot more complex. For doing it the second time around, I finished it in like a short 20 minutes. Oddly, I could pretty much sum up the quest pretty easily. First, to start the quest, you talk to a person in the desert, then you talk to people at the dig site, then you're sent to do a barrels run, complete a puzzle, and kill a demon. And once you're done, return and you're done with the entire quest. Oddly, I remember the quest being a lot more complex than just 2 errands, but I guess doing the puzzle for the first time just kind of made it a bit longer than I expected. The quest following the Turmoil quest was the ROTM quest. Now, this had probably the right feeling of a quest. It had exploration, you went to various locations to find certain things, and it has puzzles, cinematic cutscenes, and even an adequate boss fight. So it had pretty much everything that a quest needed. And although it's understandable that not every single quest could be on par with this level of quality, well, because in-depth quests will require a lot of development time to check the lore so that it's accurate, and to just have overall content to make it a good quest. So all of this is pretty hard to manage, but what is easier to do, easier not better, is making new storylines starting from scratch. Instead of having to add upon what is already made, making new quests, you're given like pretty much a fresh canvas. So in terms of making new quests, a brand new quest storyline is just a lot easier to make than adding in like a Grandmaster quest that follows like the Elven storyline. That should be, I think it's supposed to be like next year or this year. The same goes for creating new areas. Instead of adding upon like the RuneScape world surface map, it's a lot easier to just create a portal and just lead it to an instance area where the area is located, which is like the player owned ports, where the instance portal is at Port Sarim. And that's just a lot easier to do. Now, it's kind of cool how certain areas are connected, even ones that you wouldn't suspect. Like, since the last episode of my Nills to Bills episode, the beta and alpha for RS3 has been released, and in the beta, you get the increased render distance with the WebGL graphics. Now, the render distance makes it possible to see shore to shore, so if you were to stand on top of a patal, you can see all the way to pest control, which was oddly just like south of it. What is also unique is that if you go like the underground area, usually you can't see very far beyond because it's usually just black, but it's actually a lot of the areas are actually connected with each other. Like there's actually a map for the whole underground thing where it has most of the underground areas of RS just located down there. It's actually pretty much just like another surface map. It's just that in between there's a lot of just plain black. So if you haven't seen any of the new RS3 features, it just looks pretty nice. What I just said earlier was the beta. The alpha is mostly focusing on being able to customize your screen. This is more of a quality of life feature as this should have been included ages ago, but I guess better late than never. Like, I myself play a variety of games, and this feature is pretty much basic with some of the games I play, although it's not exactly as flexible as Alpha aims to be, but it has some form of flexibility. So, for those who haven't heard, one of the new skills is going to be called Divination. The first skill I'm probably expecting going to be either mid-summer to late summer, and the second is probably going to be postponed to next year. Now that's my estimates on it, not exactly what it's going to be, and it's just kind of what I think it's going to be like. So I'm not an expert on the subject of divination because I've only Wikipedia searched it just to get an idea of what it's going to be like. But during the quest, the chosen commander, Zanuck, mentioned scrying, which after they revealed that the new skill was going to be called Divination, one of the words that came up while I was using Wikipedia was scrying. So I guess this could be one example of Divination already in RS lore. So I believe this is, well, it's a giant Bando statue with a scrying pole in front of him. I guess its use is for foresight. I'm not sure if that's just restricted to the past or future, but something like that. And somewhere in there probably healing, but that's probably not what is going on right here. So from what I'm hearing, the skill is going to be related heavily or, well, in some way related to RS lore. So it may not be exactly like this, but I thought this was a cool little observation about an example of divination already in RuneScape lore before it's actually out. By example, I just mean like possible instance of divination showing up in quest or already existing content. There was that butterfly event that occurred shortly after the World Awakes quest, where you would unlock additional lore on the current game. So it was in there that it had mentioned diviners, which, well, relates to divination in a way, and I guess it was kind of hinting towards the release of the new skill. So yeah, I just thought it was pretty cool that there were already examples of divination in the game. And that pretty much covers what has happened since the last episode. I've unlocked the Cursed Prayers, although I'm only level 92 or 93 prayers, so I could only use Soul Split. I can't use Turmoil yet. But at the end of this episode, I do end up unlocking automatons after completing like 10 quests. But something I wanted to ask you guys was, what do you guys watch for in this series? Because it's changed quite a bit since its initial release. Early on, I felt it was pretty relevant. I had tips on things to do, methods, my plan on how I would start money making. But since then, well, once you're at this point where, like, pretty much past 100 mil, it's pretty much come down to rinse and repeat. Sure, I could change which monsters I kill, but there really isn't that many different bosses. The only new thing to look forward to is new monsters to kill, and that doesn't come by too often. Eventually, it'll just come down to repetition. So I know just some people just listen to the series instead of watching it. So since the beginning, it's kind of moved on to a more podcast kind of money making series where my From Scratch series allows me to make videos that are not just guides, where I could talk about my views without making a video directly focused on one subject, like how I talked about earlier about cross-server trading. And yeah, I would just wanted to gauge what you guys actually look for in the series. Like, I'll definitely still finish that 5 bill eventually at some point, but I just wanted to know what you guys are kind of looking for. So as always, thank you very much for watching, and have a nice day.